Hey guys, my name is Mfawa Alfred Onen, aka Murphy. So basically, what I did last time was we did the setup of the Wi-Fi hotspot manager on CentOS. Basically, if you've not seen this, I urge you to see this. This is basically a prerequisite to this video I'm going to shoot. What I'm going to do now is we've set up the Wi-Fi hotcakes hotspot manager. This is going to be the radio's administrative panel, and what we need to do now is to set up the captive portal part of the software using CoovaChilli. So if you notice, we stopped. This is where we stopped in the video in the setup page, and this is going to be a follow-up video. You notice we're able to log in as the user root and the password admin, and this is the dashboard of Wi-Fi hotspot manager. Alright, so I'm just going to log in and I'm going to show you a couple of things before we continue. One of the requirements you need in this case is you need to have two network interface cards. You can see here that I have one of them that is not attached, so this is just to demonstrate that. In your own case, this would be a real box and you've connected one of the interface to your ISP or your service provider or your internet source, and then one of the interface will be your LAN interface where clients will now connect to. Alright, so having done that, let's jump right into the system. And what we have, if you remember from the last time, is we have the folder called tools, and within tools we have the CoovaChilli source. Now there are two ways of actually installing CoovaChilli. You can go ahead and just compile or just run a configure script and then make install, and then it's going to install it in a path. But since we are running an RPM based system, it's actually very neat to run your RPM files. That way it makes it easier to manage them. You can uninstall, update and all that without actually locating files manually. So this is majorly one of the benefits of package control. So if you're running an Ubuntu based system, basically you want to have the .deb file for Debian based systems, and just like we have RPMs. So a couple of things we need to do to actually make it work. If you've done the previous videos in the blog, if you've done all the videos in the blog, then you should have the same setup with what I have. I've not really done anything there. So anyway, if you're wondering how to get Wi-Fi CoovaChilli, so basically you can just on the blog you can click on the CoovaChilli link, and then there are a lot of use cases and support. So back to the interface, what we need to do now is to extract the CoovaChilli package. So we're going to run the CoovaChilli 1.3.0. This should have extracted the file, so we have a directory called CoovaChilli 130. So a couple of things we need to change to actually make us compile this thing successfully. So when we go into CoovaChilli 1.3, what David Bird did was, in this case, to have a distro directory, and within a distro directory he made it so that it's possible for you to have a spec file for Red Hat, and if you have SUSE Linux, then you can set up the RPM for SUSE. So for instance, you can see the spec file for SUSE and then the spec file for Red Hat. Alright, so basically, since we're running CentOS, we're going to use the CoovaChilli spec for the Red Hat package. Alright, so what I want to do now is, if you notice from the last time, we kind of have this RPM build directory. This was created from the RPM dev tools, basically just to allow us compile RPMs. So what we need to do now within the directory is to copy the spec file, the CoovaChilli spec file, to the root RPM build specs directory. Alright, so this is the path you need to copy it to, and obviously if you're wondering where we're copying it from, this is from the CoovaChilli distro Red Hat directory. Alright, so having copied that, we need to go back up a level, again, and we need to go into the src directory, and we need to make some modifications to the makefile. Alright, so basically this is an attempt I made earlier to try to compile this, and probably encountered some errors. So this is just a way to show you how to avoid the errors. So the error was actually caused by the W error. So what I want to do now is to remove the entry for that line. Alright, so we have two make files. One is .am and then the other one is .ini. So .in. So just look for the w error file, and I'm going to remove the flag. Alright, so this is just to allow you kind of skip and leave the error file. So one of the things we need to do also in this case is to go back to the spec file and ensure in that case that we have the spec file is actually owned by the root user, not some generic users that you might see later. So all we need to do in this case is we need to rename the CoovaChilli, just because we've made changes to the file. We need to rename that to, let's say, back, and then we need to compress. Okay, so we need to compress the CoovaChilli 1.3.0 directory as a .tar.gz, CoovaChilli 1.3. Right, so this should go ahead and recreate our tar file. Obviously it has taken all the changes, so I'm going to copy the CoovaChilli 1.3.tar.gz into the root rpm build sources directory. Typo, sorry. Right, so having done that, we need to go into the root rpm build directory, and we need to go into the specs file. And if you notice, if I do an ls-l, you notice the user is coming from, basically just the UIDs, and if you try to compile this, it will give you an error that the user is not valid. Okay, so we need to change this to be owned by, since we are logged in as the root user, it needs to be owned by the root user. Right, so that's one thing. So we need to go into the CoovaChilli spec file, and we need to scroll to the end somewhere here. We need to add the asterisk. This is because it complains about having some files that are packaged, that have been installed but unpackaged. So this is how you actually avoid that. And one of the things I did to avoid a potential error in the first place was to move this line, the whole of this line, to after the whole sysconfig directory declaration. Alright, so having said that, let's ensure that we have everything correctly. Alright, so you can go ahead and now use the rpm build, use the -ba flag, and kind of compile the file. So you can see here that it's going to go ahead and extract all the files, and so one thing I didn't show you, let me just stop the compilation. This is just in case you want to customize the build config file. So if you open the cover.spec file and you kind of scroll, you will see that the macro in the spec file, which is the %configure, is what will be equivalent to, or will be replaced with your configure script, and you can see all the options you can pass to the configure script to enable and disable options. So one of the things, basically, for example, if you want to enable that, let me just, alright, so let me do that again. Alright, so let me duplicate this session. This is just to show you. Alright, so once I duplicate this session, you can easily just run within the tools directory, the CoovaChilli 1.3 file. If you try to run the configure script with the help flag, alright, you should see, let's assume we want to enable the layer 3 option. So you can go into any of the configure line, and you can add, let's say, this option. Okay, so this is just an example anyway, so you can look at all the options, what you can set, what you can enable, and what you can disable, and you can go ahead and do that. So for now, this is not the scope of the video, so I'll close this, and you run the rpm build spec file. Right, so this will go ahead and run it. So let's see. Okay, I need to go back All right, and run the rpm spec file again. All right, so let's go into the specs directory again, and oh, what am I doing wrong? Oh, all right. I'm running for radius, so this is from the previous command. So this should go ahead and initiate the rpm build. You can see here how it passes all the options. You can see because we added the enable layer 3, you can see it, somewhere here. Alright, so I won't allow you to watch this. This is going to take a while depending on the speed of your system. So what I will do is I will pause. I will basically kind of stop it here because I've already done all the step. This is just to show you how I did it, so that you have your own compiled version of the CoovaChilli. So I have mine in the CoovaChilli rpm sub directory. Alright, so I'm going to upload the CoovaChilli.src.rpm file. What this allows you to do is you can easily just put this in the src directory and then kind of extract or just run it and it will work. So anyway, so you try to install this and it will move all the necessary files to the necessary location, and then you go to the rpm or the spec directory, you find the CoovaChilli.spec file and you can try to rebuild it yourself. So that's the advantage. So I'm going to install this version. Alright, so I'm going to run the rpm anyway, so I just keep using the capital UV option. Alright, let me just clear the screen again. So rpm i686. Alright, so this should go ahead and install CoovaChilli. So if you get this message, don't worry, you can be safe to ignore it. Alright, so group chili does not exist using chili root, so it doesn't matter. So by the time you go into your etc directory, and you should find a subdirectory called chili. Alright, so once you have this, then you've successfully installed CoovaChilli, and this is the default configuration option. So the first thing you do in this case, if you do an ifconfig here, you can see that you have your two interfaces. Just ensure that you always have your two interfaces. So for me, I already have the ETH0 connected to the local area network or the LAN. So this will be the inside interface. This is what will be connected to your LAN, or you can connect it to a switch and connect it to your hosts. And the ETH1 for, in this case, demonstration will be the ISP, so the internet provider. Alright, so once you have that, the first thing you need to do is to make a copy of the default file. You copy it to a file called config, and you can now go ahead and edit the config file. Alright, so one of the things you'll notice here is a very straightforward config file. You can see here that the ETH0 here is used for the WAN interface, and the ETH1 is used for the local interface. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just swap this. So this will be my LAN interface, so this will be 0 and this will be 1, right? Then your network, so I just want to maintain the 192.168 network I have, 10.0, so this should be 10.168. so I'm just modifying this, so this should be the server address. Obviously it's going to take the first IP address. Alright, so this should be fine. The UAM port, this is the port that will be redirected to on the subscriber network. Alright, so the next one you see here is the the HSDyn IP. So what we need to do is to enable the dynamic IP option. This is for DHCP, if you're wondering. This is for DNS. Alright, so if you're going to kind of reserve some IP address and provide static IP addresses, then you can enable the HS static option. So for me, I'm just going to enable the the IP range. So it's going to be the subnet, and then the DNS or the domain name. In this case, we're going to specify, let's just give an example. Let's say morphy.com or something. Then of course, if you have your DNS servers, then you can go ahead and specify the DNS servers, or you can use the open DNS servers. So say I have alright, so I'm just trying to say I have a DNS server running on the same box, then it's easy for me to just tell it to use the the local DNS server. So 127.0.0.1. Alright, here you can create a NAS ID, so let's just call it cp underscore nas 01. This is just a name we're creating. Your radius, it's localhost. This is the IP address. This is usually going to be the IP address or the the host name of the radius server. So because we have the radius installed locally on the same machine, then it's going to be localhost for the two. Here you can go ahead and allow some domains. So let's say mfwa.com something. Here the rat secret is testing123. So anytime you, for this demonstration, I'm just going to leave this as it is, but I encourage you to change this password. This is because obviously this is the default password for radius, so you want to prevent attacks. This is UAM secret, so we're going to change the UAM secret to something secure. So let's just say secret. All right, so just make sure that we kind of edit the other options to allow for the secret. All right, so this is going to be if you have a proxy server, then you specify that. Then if you're running the AAA HTTP radios, of course, HTTP access for radios, then you can enable that. One of the things that you can also do here is you can enable the HS NAS IP. Obviously, you can make it localhost, so the NAS or the NAS will be the local host. One of the things you notice here is that the server swaps the HS UAM listen to the same HS server. If you look at the HS format, in this case you can see HTTP UAM listen, UAM port, and so on. And so what we need to do is to actually, this will be the IP address that will be reached by the clients, and of course this is where we're going to point to our login page. Alright, so I'll get to that in a moment, so I'm just going to allow that. There are other options here that you can see that have been set to off by default, and one of the things you can see here is things like the HSNIP. So the HSNIP allows you to use any IP address on the subscriber LAN. Let's just say we enable this. Alright, this HS MAC auth, this is for authenticating MAC addresses. So if you want to kind of authenticate MAC addresses by bypassing the captive portal. Let's say you have some series of machines that you want to bypass the captive portal for, you just want them to connect and then they just have access to the system, then you can enable the MAC auth, and you can now come to the MAC auth mode local, and then you can specify the MAC allow list, which will be comma separated or from a local host. So basically this means the list of users will come from a local host, and here you can set the users in this case of the system, so they can be local users, or here you can allow OpenID authentication. You can allow WPA guests, DNS paranoia. So this is to drop DNS packets that is not a CNAME, SOA, or MX record. So you take example will be TXT records or otherwise. So here you can use the maps. So I haven't tried this myself anyway, but hopefully it works. One of the things also that you can see here is in other features here you can see the HS dev session timeout. So this is going to be the default timeout. Let's say client logs in and he's idle for X amount of time, right? You want the system to log the person out so that he doesn't maybe exhaust his cup, or for instance, let's say somebody just went to grab a cup of coffee and then met a friend, and so many things could happen. So you want after a particular amount of timeouts to be able to kick the person out. So that's the session timeout. The next one, the idle timeout, is when the session is idle. You still want to log them out so that when they come they can kind of re-log in. The next one, the next two here, is for the maximum download and upload. So this is going to be the bandwidth uplink and downlink. So you can see by default is disabled, so it's unlimited at the moment. Why we're not worried about this is because we can control this from our YFi Hotspot Manager or radius configuration here. Alright, so you can see here is for the radius configuration. If you want to have a centralized radius configuration, then you can have one server, and then you can have multiple servers running across other sites, and then they all submit or kind of fetch their configuration from one single server. Alright, so this is the firewall. This is for firewall issues. So you can add ports that you want to allow. In this case, this will be added or injected into the firewalls. I'll show you in a moment that just by installing CoovaChilli, it has actually created a very strict firewall. This is one of the techniques it uses to redirect people to the captive portal. Alright, so this also is very interesting. Say you're running a proxy server, let's say Squid proxy server, and you host it here, then you can actually point it to a transparent proxy. So in this way, all your clients will pass through a proxy, even though it will be transparent to them. You know that they pass through a proxy just to improve, bandwidth utilization or so on. So basically, I'm going to leave most of this. Here you can see the HS provider. So here you can customize it. So for me, let me say, let me just give it something, so you can go ahead and customize this, as much as you want. So for me, all right, so here I can give it a name. This is not as important, but here I can say maybe hotspot. All right, so let's say Murphy, maybe network. Right, so network name. Here you can see the area code. So for me, Nigeria will be 2341, and then the country ISO format is NG. Basically, so I've actually spent some time here just to walk you through most of the configuration options. Obviously, there are more that are not in the file that we're going to add in a moment, but for now, I just want you to kind of have in the back of your mind that basic installation this we require to kind of set to allow access. So for this, I'm going to save that, and before we continue, before we start that, I'm going to I'm just going to go into our the root directory, and if you notice in the Wi-Fi C2 Wi-Fi kick directory, all right, so in the Wi-Fi in the Wi-Fi subdirectory, we should have a couple of interfaces, a couple of pages, login pages. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to extract one of the login pages from the SVN, and then I'll come back and explain what happened here. So I'll be right back. Alright, so basically what I noticed was he has already included, that is the vendor wallet has already included the login page. So what we need to do is to go into the C2 Wi-Fi, in the setup directory, and here you can see a directory called CoovaJSON. All right, so we're just going to copy the CoovaJSON to the, or we could just specify the path again. All right, so you can go ahead and log out and go into the CoovaJSON. One of the things you notice already is that we have a lot of files here. We have the about PHP, about provider, and so on. So a couple of changes we need to make in this file. Let me just clear it and make it this way. The first thing we need to do is to edit the UAM file. The UAM file is one that would actually communicate with the CoovaChilli daemon. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the UAM file. I'm going to edit the UAM file, sorry, where we have the UAM secret. The secret is going to match the UAM secret we put in Chilli spot. So if you remember, it was secret, so you need to ensure that they are the same. One of the things you need to also check is in the JavaScript directory, we need to modify the custom.js file. In the custom.js file, we just need to ensure that all the IP addresses here match the IP address of our UAM server, in this case localhost. So what I want to do now, what I want to ensure now, is to just do search and replace. So I'm going to replace 10.1.0.1 with 192.168.10.1, and I'm going to replace all. You can see it has replaced all the 5 occurrences. So this will allow us to use the new work in progress login page that the Van World has created. So basically, once you just update those changes, all right, so once you update the changes, we can go ahead and try that out. You can see we already have the CoovaJSON UM page. So I'm going to clear this. All right, so I think we're ready. So what we can try is, if you just to give it a try. Okay, we have a lot going on. All right, so what I'm going to do now is we're going to go into the Chilli directory. All right, so open up the config file. So now we're going to add the list. Remember when I said we're going to come back to the UAM format? Then this is going to be the time. So by now, if you've watched most of my videos, I like to ensure that the UAM format just goes to the UAM listen, and we don't have to put the UAM port in this case. Let me just go ahead and right. So this, and then it's going to be Coova. Alright, so CoovaJSON. Then you can look for the, let's just try the mobile version. Alright, so let's just type mobile. So what I'm doing now is I'm pointing this guy to, this guy. Alright, so if you notice, this guy was already inside the CoovaJSON mobile.php file. So I'm just trying to show you that it's possible to just set one of the options here. One of the things we need to also ensure there, anyway, we can go ahead and give it a try. Let's go ahead and set it up. But remember, I wanted to show you how the alright, so because we've not started Chilli Spot, so I'm going to go ahead and do a chk config Chilli on. This is just to ensure that it starts at boot. The problem with this is I cannot start it from the Ssh Client. This is because it's going to kind of shut down the process and restart it behind the scenes, and seems to have problems. So I'm going to go directly to the let me just minimize this. So I'm going to log in directly from the terminal. Alright, so once you log in here, the first thing I want to do is I want to start. Okay, so okay, one more thing, guys. Let me just show you. Just a moment. There's a configure option, which is the HS core port. Let me just show you what that means. Alright, so this basically allows to specify. Alright, so this will allow us to specify the the core port in that's for the CoovaChilli agent. The reason why I'm setting that is, and how do I know? I'm just going to show you by the way. So you can customize that as you want. You can customize the port. If you go into the NAS list, and this will be the NAS because it's up. This is the NAS we're using. If you click on the edit option here, you can see under the optional info, you can see the port. This is 3799, and this is the core port option. So we need to enable that. Alright, so if you're wondering what core port is, I believe core port is change of authorization port, I think. Alright, so this has to do with radius. Alright, so having done that, let me just go ahead and run this service Chilli start. So I believe everything goes well, we should get an OK message. Chilli stop daemon. Alright, so even though it gives this error message, you can see here that the USR has been Chilli-C is started. You can see the process ID is 11241. That means Chilli is up, and if you want to confirm that Chilli is up, you notice that now you have a new interface which is turn 0, and you can see it has created a tunnel based on the IP address of the interface. Alright, so one thing we can do here, if you notice here, I've lost connection with the SSH client, and this is because it has reset the way we have access to the files. But remember when we set the IP address. So what I want to do now is I'm going to leave this. I'm going to open up my so I'm going to open up my network adapter. So what I'm going to do now is to go into the properties tab, because I already had a static address setup. I'm going to allow it to obtain this dynamically. So this will hopefully this should be identified, and we should get an IP address from the Chilli server. So we can monitor that by doing a tail log messages. Alright, so we can see what's going on here. Remember, we set the HS we kind of set the HS any IP option. Alright, so here you can see the new request, and the server has proposed an IP address, but I keep saying here that this is still alright. It actually gave the IP address, my bad. Alright, so you can see now the connection is successful. One of the things you notice here, you can see the domain we set, you can see the IP address pool, you can see that. So basically what I can do is I can click on this and just restart session, and alright, so I can get connection. That's alright, so that's something else. So let me just try again and see if I can get connection. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you the IP tables, and you're going to see how all the the options. So let me run it through more so that you can see it. You can see all the IP address we've set, the domain, the boot flag. You can see how it does that and how it locks everything down. So what I want to do now is to go back to etc chili config. So what I want to do now is to go where we have the somewhere here we should have the HS ports. Alright, so here we should have 443. Here we should add the 22 to it, and let's try to restart the chili service. Alright, so let's run on IP tables this time around, and yes, you can see we have an SSH port. So let's load, open this, and yes, we have access. So basically you can see what the port allows you to do. So there you can add any port you want to open, so it makes it flexible. So if everything was successful, you should be able to still reach our Wi-Fi hotspot manager. Alright, and what we can try also is we can try to invoke the captive portal. So if you want to know how to invoke it, remember the port 3990. Let's invoke that. You can see CoovaChilli. You can see this is the splash page, and of course you can see because we set the the login page to be the mobile version. You can see here you can see possibly we are the biggest provider and so on. You can see that this is the mobile version, and the reason why David did this is to actually why Dirk did this is to ensure that if you have a hotspot directory, of course you can see all the hotspots available. So you can see this is the local NAS, and you can see all the details in the local NAS. Alright, so if you want to see about, of course you can see the resident in, you can contact them. If you have pictures, of course you can have gallery. Basically, if you notice the pictures are not rendering, I feel this is some minor tweaks. So one of the most interesting part here is the connect part. Here we need to specify the username and password. So if everything goes successfully, we should be able to log in with the user dvdwalt.ri. Let's see. Alright, so you can see, ladies and gentlemen, you can see that now we have the data plan. You can see 0 bytes of 250 megabytes. You can disconnect. You can see hopefully this is the path that you're trying to go. Probably time to revisit, and if I expand this again and I go to root admin. Anyway, so if you notice, I actually invoked the captive portal, but for you, obviously, because you've already set the option to kind of you've already connected to the internet directly, then if you try to go to the internet, of course it will redirect you back to the login page. So everything is successful. So here you can see, refresh that, you can see the session details. In this case, you can see the data that was in 11 kilobytes. So after this refresh, of course it will come back with the new updated kind of packet consumption. You can see session time, you can see idle timeout, and so on. So it basically reads that. You can see the data usage. In this case, this person is using about 250 megabytes. So far he has used 50 kilobytes. If I log in and I go to activities and I go to let's say activity viewer, In here you should be able to see that we're logged in with the user dvd.ri. You can see that. You can see total usage, which is 50k. One of the things you can do here also is you can actually select the user and kick the user out, or you can actually edit the user. You can see the IP address that the user is coming from. You can see the NAS usage, for instance. You can see the NAS usage obviously over time will change. NAS, okay, so you can see that basically everything is working the way it should. So for instance, let's say if you notice this guy is connected, let's try something. Let's try and boot him out. Yes, we're sure. Kicking the person out, and you can see dvd.ri left us. If I go back to the page, hopefully by the time this refreshes, we should be able to kind of disconnect from the session. Anyway, so but this is for the mobile user, so you can see it has kicked the user out. So you can see as an admin you can do a lot more. So just to kind of save you from the stress, you can see we've successfully set up the captive portal. You can see that the captive portal is active. The necessary configuration was set in Chilli config. All right, so you can see here we specify the correct one interface, the local interface. We specify the network and the mask. We specify the server address, and then we specify the dynamic IP addresses. What I've not shown you is also the option to control the range. So let's say you want to start the IP addresses from 192.168.10.10. Of course, you can easily just try to achieve that by going to by adding it in the you can go into Chilli, or let's just go into Chilli. Right, so you can go into the local .com file, or you can go into the hs.com file. Okay, so here you can see all the options that the system has regenerated. You can see the radios, NAS ID. You can see the ports. You can see the UAM server. You can see the config file for admin update file. You can see the UAM secret. You can see the core ports. Okay, so you can see why it's important. All right, so I think we're pretty much done in this case. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it here anyway. Like I said, I don't want to make it too long. So what I'll do is basically, if you have any questions, hit me up in the comments, and I'm going to basically try and help you configure it and set it up in a path you prefer to use. But for now, basically this is all we need to do to have the captive portal active, and we've integrated it with the YFi Hotspot Manager. You can see here we've kicked out the user. Of course, the user was logged in using the captive portal, and basically you have a complete system. So maybe in the future, if I have time, what I will do is I'll come here and then we'll treat advanced topics. What I want to show you too is if you go into anyway, so just go to the hotspot, the Wi-Fi kind of Wi-Fi hotspot page, for instance. You should be able to access that. For me, I've disconnected from the internet, so I shouldn't be able to have access. But once you get to the page, you can see there are a lot of advanced sections. So what I would like to show you, basically it's in the lab environment. I haven't completed that, but what I want to do is I'm trying to experiment with the new features of the CoovaChilli 1.3. In this case, ability to support VLANs and to support multiple kind of multiple subnets with different captive portal options. So hopefully that'll be interesting. I'll come back with a video and we'll shoot that. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed it, and from me it's bye bye, and hope to see you next time.